All right, everyone. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. Mark Rogers TV, striking up the live stream on a championship Friday night. We've got the MAC championship just about a half hour away with Northern Illinois 7-5, 6-2 in the MAC, taking on the Buffalo Bulls, 10-2 this season with just one loss in conference play. Later tonight, Utah and Washington, the Utes and the Huskies meet for the Pac-12 championship. Of course, the Huskies won it 2 years ago against Colorado. The Utah Utes making their first appearance in the Pac-12 championship. Just released a video just a few minutes ago on the Utah approach to the Pac-12 championship game with Shane Roberts from the Block U. So please enjoy that video as you get prepped for the Pac-12 championship game. Of course, this is Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. If you'd like to subscribe to our newsletter, I encourage you, if you have any doubts or any hesitancy, that you talk to any of the folks on the live chat that are subscribed to the newsletter that comes out each and every Monday. It's the voice of college football. Please subscribe by sending your email address to mine at markrogerstv@gmail.com. We've done our very best to supply you with previews and predictions on championship weekend. We've got the Utah side, the Washington side. We've got my prediction. We've got Ohio State Northwestern. We've got viewpoints from both sides at 7 o'clock Eastern tonight. In just about 20 minutes, we've got Tony Gerdeman from the Ozone to talk Ohio State football as the Buckeyes, of course, prepare for the Wildcats. We've got the Oklahoma side. We've got the Texas side. We've got my prediction on the Big 12 championship game. We have Clemson talk. We've got Pitt talk. We've got my prediction on the ACC championship game as well. And the SEC, we talked Alabama with Stephen M. Smith of Touchdown Alabama. We also talked the Georgia side with Savannah Lee Richardson, Bulldog Illustrated. We've got a call coming in. Welcome to Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Bash.
Hey, Bash, what's going on, man?
What's going on with the playoff implications for this championship weekend.
Yeah.
And we will get that answered in the days to come, and I guarantee you we will talk playoff probably tomorrow night after all the games.
Sure.
Probably Sunday morning as well. But let's just get to the point that I think people are missing here. And I think we need to change up the committee. And this is a just kind of speculation here, and I think that the fact that Frank Beamer's on the committee and everyone's listening to Frank Beamer is a problem. I think that's why the ACC was so highly rated, and I think we don't have enough people on the committee, enough credible people, and I think athletic directors on the committee is just ridiculous. Because, yeah, you're not going to have any bias towards your own school because you're going to be recused from the conversation. But as we all probably have heard from now on, debating that number 4 spot, if the favorites win, Ohio State beats Northwestern by a convincing margin. Oklahoma can win by around a touchdown against Texas and then out in beats Georgia. Guess who's not going to be? Guess how many people is going to be in the committee room talking about that number 4 spot?
I believe it's 10 out of 13, yeah.
3 people getting recused, including Frank Beamer, which is one of the biggest influencer on the committee. And it's a problem that we're at this little people with athletic directors. And if we can't find enough people, and I'm thinking at least 25 credible people on the committee, then we need to just go back to the computer. Because maybe the BCS didn't get the top 2 right all the time. But as much as I can remember, they at least got the top 4 rather accurate. And the teams that we were debating to be in the BCS championship, it wasn't like, oh, they were way down here at 7, but they should have been all the way here at 2. No, it was number 3, Oklahoma State, out against number 2, Alabama. You had teams in the top 4 that weren't getting a shot at the championship in the BCS that otherwise would have. So we need to change up the college football playoff in terms of the committee. The language is irresponsible, inconsistent, and just flat out wrong that you want to put 4 teams in based on nothing but what your opinion is. And it's completely a subjective process versus you can't go to the paper. Like, this is why I like what you're doing, is you're going straight off of the resume and straight off of all these facts. They don't want to go off the facts. That's why Alabama made it last year. There's no factual information backing up a lot of what the committee is saying. You cannot overvalue, or in my opinion, I think they overvalued Michigan and Penn State and leave Ohio State below Oklahoma. The fact that they have 2 top 12 wins and Oklahoma doesn't have any top 15 wins, so Ohio State has better wins. So which is it? You want to do the eye test like you did last year? Because Ohio State looks better. No? Well, that's a subjective answer. Do you want to go ahead and go with the wins or the losses? Well, I guess you're going to go with the losses, and now you're going to get an argument because a lot of people, like myself, doesn't think that one game should dictate the entire season for one team. So there's my rant. I'd like you to respond. I'm going to go ahead and hang up because I got some things to do, but I will definitely listen to your response. Thank you for that little rant.
Thanks, Bash. Always appreciate it. Educated caller, loves his college football and is very invested in it, obviously, emotionally, and also mentally. So he brings some brains to the conversation as well. So he makes a whole lot of sense there in a number of ways. And I actually have Alonzo Oliver on the line as well. He's supposed to be joining us via video, but I'll see if he's on here. Hey, Zoe, it's Mark. How are you? You're on right now.
I can't see you.
Oh, so you've responded to the link here?
Uh-huh.
Okay, well, let me try it again. Hang on. Sorry, everyone. Sorry, everyone out there. I must have messed up this link that I sent to Zoe. I don't know what happened here, but I will respond to that person's question here in just a second. Okay, I'm trying to send this link out again. See what happens here. Okay, we'll see if you've got that one. So call me back if you're having problems with that one. Thanks, man. Alonzo 1219 talking Miami football. Hope to have him on very soon. We got a little bit backed up, unfortunately, because this live stream was supposed to be out at 6:30 Eastern time. It was more in the 6:40 range. We got Zoe on at 6:30, and the link's not working. I've got Tony Gerdeman backed up probably at 7 o'clock Eastern time, so we'll see where we get with all of that. Maybe we can back up Tony. I would like to free up everyone by 8 o'clock Eastern time to watch the Pac-12 championship game, me included. So we'll take you up to kickoff of the Pac-12 championship game. The MAC title game, of course, coming up in just a few minutes. All right, so Bash Gaming had complaints about, number one, there only being 13 members. Of course, as he mentioned, the members involved with that particular team with any connection, and there's a criteria of what determines a connection. They are excused from the room and don't take part in that discussion. Although I would question how valid that is in particular. Yes, they don't take part in that discussion specifically about, let's say it's Oklahoma. They don't take part in the Oklahoma discussion. However, this is all a comparison process. Believe me, I can relate this to my job and some of the things that we do where we rate certain aspects of an operation, and we do so supposed to be in a fashion in which we're rating that component against a standard. But the only way to do that is to rate it against the other components. There has to be a comparison. And obviously, when you're ranking teams, you're comparing them. So even though particular members of the committee are extricated from that particular team conversation, they have to give their opinion by transit of property for or against that particular team and ranking the other team ahead or behind them. We'll get back to the college football playoff conversation. We got Alonzo1219 on to talk some. How you doing?
I'm good. How's it going, Mark?
It's going pretty well. I have no idea what happened to that link, but fortunately we got you the next one. So
I'm going to go live for a second on my channel and tell everybody to come over here because people wanted me to do a video tonight and I didn't feel like doing one. So, but when you called me and asked me to do one, I was going to do one with you. So I'll go live for 2 seconds, let people know to come over here.
Absolutely. I'll take that. And I'll try to move back my 7 o'clock. We'll see how that works out. So you got a couple wins to end the season to get to a bowl game.
Yeah.
Does that mean anything to you?
I mean, it does because the seniors get opportunities, you know what I'm saying, to get in that, to play in a bowl and win a bowl. So yeah, that means a lot. I love to see Celdrick, you know what I'm saying, and just all the seniors get out there, you know, and get a big win, you know, for their careers. And you know, that last game as a University of Miami player, you know what I'm saying. So that, yeah, the 2 wins definitely were huge from that standpoint.
So I encourage everyone to check out Alonzo1219 here on YouTube. You can also follow him on Facebook. He's got a growing Facebook page.
It's too big. I got to cut it out
all the time.
I got to cut it out. I'm sending everybody to my 1219 Attitude Personified page because my Facebook page is getting too big. Right now I'm about to hang up on YouTube. I'm just letting everybody know I'm about to hang up. Do me a favor, if y'all want to catch anything tonight, right now I'm live on Mark Rogers. So anybody want to check it out, man, come over to Mark Rogers TV, subscribe to Mark Rogers channel. Come on. Y'all do your boy a favor. Come on over here. Check out the live stream on Mark Rogers TV, man. Love you guys. I'm out.
So I listen to Zoe on a regular basis, whether that's on YouTube and more frequently now on Facebook. So what I encourage you guys out there that love college football, and even if you're not into Miami, we all have aspects that we love in regards to sports, college football, life, all sorts of issues out there. So I would encourage you to check out Zoe and get some straight talk. And I think we can all benefit from diversity of opinion.
Yeah, I think a lot of people get upset with me. A lot of people get upset with me with that. It's like you only supposed to talk football, and I am live, please. It's like you only supposed to talk football. Like your whole life revolves around football. My whole life doesn't revolve around football. You know, there are different aspects of my life, so I have to let people know that my whole life doesn't revolve around football. And I think that sometimes people get annoyed, but the only way good change is going to ever come in this world is if people with different opinions sit down and talk with each other, and people don't believe in doing that. It's too controversial for people. I'm not doing it. Yeah, I want to talk football. I didn't invite you to my Facebook page. I invited you to my YouTube channel. If it's just about football, if it's about life, then you know we talk more than just football.
So the back half of that statement I agree with, but I also reserve a level of respect for those people that just want to take part in whatever they want to take part in. So if they just want to talk football and they don't want to get involved in social issues,
oh no, I don't have
a problem. That's fine. That's their take.
I don't have a problem with it. I don't have a problem with it. My issue with it is when you complain about me saying something on my Facebook page. If you don't like what I say, then you know.
Absolutely. So I believe that regardless of what you present yourself to be, and we know what I present myself to be. I talk college football all the time. Now, there's certain social issues that go over that line, and I address them at the time. But then people shouldn't be upset if I do or don't respond to something, because go somewhere else. And the same thing with you. Now, the first thing I'll say, and then I'll let you go on this one, is that so what you said about people sitting down and talking to each other, so I think that's a great point, because you can't understand the other person's perspective unless you listen. And if you're just blurting out posts and refuse to listen to the other side, then that doesn't do a whole lot of good.
That's why I go live when I do my posts. And I tell people to call in. I remember me and the guy just got in a disagreement, and he came on live, and I actually agreed with a lot of what he was saying. And that's how, like I said, that's how my Facebook page is. I had my Facebook page years before I did have my YouTube channel. You know what I'm saying? So my Facebook page is my personal page, and when people come over to it, if I invite you to it, it's different. If you ask me for a friend request, then you're coming to my personal life now, not my YouTube world. You know, and I just let you have a personal life, and some people live certain parts of their personal life on Facebook, which I do. You know, I try to reach a group of people on a different basis. It's not just about football with me. You know, it's about jobs, working opportunities, things to help people grow and stuff like that. It's more than football. I know this is supposed to be about football, but it's more to life than football.
There's no doubt about that. We should be reminded of that every day.
Yeah.
Basically, I love football, but it's got its priority in life, and it's down the list somewhere.
Yep.
Got Zoe on the line to talk Miami football and 7-5 season for the Canes. And ironically,
That's disappointing.
What's that?
That's disappointing.
Well, it's disappointing, but you were 5-5 2 weeks ago. So we'll look at the bright side of finishing with 2 wins to get to postseason play. And that in the same way that Pitt beat a team in Miami that had already won the division championship, the same thing happened this year. Pitt comes down. They already won the division championship, which is a shock to everyone. And Miami wins the game convincingly.
And I don't the helter skelter. I guess I guess I'm not down. I didn't get too high on last year because I kept saying that I felt as if the defense was, you know, bailing us out of every game. And like, people feel like when you're trying to hold coaches accountable, they feel like you're kind of being a Debbie Downer or something like that. And I just feel like when you get paid $5 million a year to do a job, you know, you should be more open minded and more willing to change. And I just feel like we have so much talent that 7-5 is most definitely that's definitely beneath our expectations. And I keep when Rick took over the program, our offense was supposed to definitely be good, and it just hasn't taken off in 3 years. In 3 years of him coaching, it hasn't taken off. And I think what gets me upset with him, and got me upset with Thomas Brown, is that instead of taking responsibility the way Manny Diaz does, if you listen to Manny Diaz's interview, he did an interview where he was like, you know, they asked him, the reporters basically was trying to throw kids up under the bus. He was like, "What they should do?" He said, "No, it's my responsibility to make sure those guys are in the right position. It's my responsibility to teach these guys to understand how to play football." You know, and what Rick is, you know, he is consistent blaming of players, and even though we finished 7-5, it's like, to me, that's underachieving as a Hurricane fan. That's underachieving. It's like what y'all did to Michigan. It felt like Ohio State was underachieving all year. And when the time came to step up, when they really needed them, they whooped ass. You know what I'm saying? They did what they were supposed to do. And it's like our offense and defense are two different teams. They're like two totally different teams. It's like one of them take on the personality of Manny Diaz, and the other one takes on the personality of Rick. And we can't continue this trend because it's going to eventually hurt us. It's going to hurt our recruiting class. It's going to eventually hurt Miami. You know what I'm saying? Bad if you continue to sputter on offense the way we've done. We can't just take wins and be like, okay, we won, because we did that last year. And it got us where we at right now because we lived off fool's gold.
So Mark Richt is going to be there next year, of course. He's going to be his job. So if you're running the show, then what kind of bar do you give him? Is it a win total? Is it a win total taken into context of the development of the offense? How do you evaluate him?
First thing I do is he's hiring an offensive coordinator. That's first and foremost. He's hiring an offensive coordinator. He has no control over that. He's hiring an offensive coordinator, and he's leaving him alone because I heard that when he was in Georgia, he had problems with Bobo. Bobo had problems with him interfering. Mike Bobo had problems with him interfering with his offense. Um, so he's hiring an offensive coordinator, and his son has to go. We're going to hire a real quarterback coach, a guy who's actually coached quarterbacks before, not someone on a 1 year trial, or 2 years. He's been there 1 or 2 years now. So obviously, if we're saying our quarterbacks aren't good, then we have we have two highly recruited quarterbacks that's on our roster right now, and if they're not developing, then either it's scheme or it's quarterback coach not developing or both. So those are the two major changes that's going to be made on offense. And to me, and I know it's controversial, but I'm so afraid to lose Manny Diaz that I would do a Florida State. We did Jimbo Fisher, and I'll make him a head coach and wait and pay him whatever I need to pay him to keep him. Because I don't want to lose him. And 2023, Rick's contract is up. So those are the three things I would be going into that season with. With me, if I'm the athletic director, and Rick's just gonna have to understand that. And those are things I would sit down with him and discuss with him. You know, that's what's gonna happen.
Yeah, so I don't think you can put a win total on it. There's got to be a bit of a feel to it as well, and you got to look at the development of the quarterbacks and development of the offense. But the offensive coordinator has to be in play. Well, unfortunately, the powers that be, it doesn't seem like they're necessarily going to force that issue.
I believe they are.
They are?
I believe they are.
Okay.
I was told this the week that they pulled Nikoski Perry that and people got upset with me saying that I'm reporting fake news. Well, I reported something by a good source of mine who actually, knows inside the program, and um, he's a friend of mine, and he told me that there was a meeting, and there are definitely going to be an offensive coordinator this year, and there's a lot of grumbling going on now over the past few weeks that they're looking at offensive coordinators. Hasn't been anything like out there, but there's been a lot of rumors about Miami's hiring offensive coordinator. There's been a rumor about the offensive coordinator from TCU. There's also been a rumor about some other offensive coordinator out of the Big 12 that they want to look at. So I believe there will be an offensive coordinator hired this year.
Got Alonzo1219 on the line talking Miami football. You can join him on his YouTube channel. The U family, Alonzo1219. The Canes awaiting their bowl destination. That'll come on Sunday after the college football playoff selections are made, the rankings, and then the bowl bids come out and are official. So they're pretty far down the ACC pecking order that goes, obviously, Clemson most likely to the playoff unless they completely implode. And then it's a muddled mess. Syracuse has the second best record and resume, but the bowl themselves get to choose who they want based on TV ratings and how many people are going to travel. So I'm hearing that Syracuse, despite having the highest ranking and the best record at 9-3, beating Boston College head to head, they may get trumped by North Carolina State and Boston College, and really because that's the way it works.
And that amazes me. And this is what I say about this is what gets me upset about our coaching staff, especially on the offensive side of the ball. If you look at the way Syracuse played Clemson this year, if you look at how the tough games they played everybody, and they almost had a double-digit win season, and is this his second year as head coach or his first year as head coach at Syracuse?
Dino Babers, this I believe is year 4.
Year 4, but you look at he's a young coach who's building a program. And building that's a hard program to build. Syracuse is not Jim Brown days, man. This is 2019. No one knows. Everybody knows Boeheim. You know what I'm saying? No one knows Syracuse football. So for him to be building that program and instilling toughness into that school, I'm afraid to see if he was to get a North Carolina job or something like that. You know what I'm saying? Oh my goodness, a job where you can get better talent. You know what I'm saying? It would be amazing. I'm not saying he's a great coach. I don't know yet, but I mean, what he's doing with that Syracuse program is amazing.
Yeah, Syracuse is basically sitting on the border of Canada. It's up there in the lake, and then there is nothing around it. And the state of New York plays some decent football. Their
But their
top
best
five
players go to
recruiting players
Rutgers,
are decent,
and their best players go to Rutgers
but their best players go, or they go to Penn State or
or
Ohio
Penn State.
State,
Yeah,
somewhere. Their very best players, like if they probably have 2 or 3 players that are really really good, can go just about anywhere, and then after that it tails off, and obviously they're, oh my goodness, Florida has. I've done these comparisons before, and it's just astounding. Florida might have 100 to 150 players that are ranked ahead of New York's top 3 or 4 players. That's how much of a disparity it is. So a guy like Dino Babers at Syracuse, he's looking all over the country and he's plucking the leftovers from Miami, Florida, Florida State, and anybody else who goes into Florida that's got a better reputation, like Ohio State and Georgia and some other schools like that. And then he gets these guys that, and if you look at the rankings, man, he'll pluck these receivers. They're ranked 200th in the country, and they'll come in there and catch 85 passes and be players.
yeah, because of the system that he runs, and it's like, why not get the players that FAU or FIU is going after to come up to Syracuse, where they're going to be, in the ACC and get an opportunity to be on TV more. You know what I'm saying? And when you win, if Syracuse win, they're going to be on TV. I mean, they're Syracuse. You know, they're going to be on TV. You know, so I mean, it's smart what he's doing. You know, and then they play in a dome too. So I mean, it's smart what they're doing.
Yeah, they pretty much have a schedule where they play the home games in a dome, and most of the conference is in the South. So they basically avoid pretty nasty weather, the possible late trip to Boston or Pittsburgh, something like that. I've got a couple of questions on here. I don't know how much you've prepped for anything on down the road, but
Nothing at all. I haven't prepared.
yeah, I didn't think so, but we can kick this around if you have any thoughts about Richard Neal is asking who you would like to see Miami play in a bowl game.
Uh, it's not about who I would like to see. It's about where I would like them to play at. I like them to play in Jacksonville or something. I don't care who they play. To be honest with you, as long as they play somewhere close to home, so I can get there.
So yeah, if they get to the Gator Bowl there, the Tax Slayer Bowl, it's the Gator Bowl. They play at the Gator Bowl. I hate to call it the Tax Slayer Bowl in Jacksonville. That would be your best spot, huh?
Yeah. So it's not about who we play, but I know this discussion came up. I would love to play LSU at the end of every year and start a rival with those guys. That's one thing I would love to start if they could somehow do that, because we don't have a rival game at the end of the year, and I would love for it to be Syracuse. I mean, love for it to be LSU.
Well,
we discussed that last week.
The SEC is not going to let that happen.
I mean, why wouldn't they? They play an SEC team at the end of the year. Every other SEC team besides Alabama, they play an out of conference team, I think. You know?
Well, it's you've got that ACC SEC crossover. So Georgia, Georgia Tech, Florida, Florida State, Louisville, Kentucky, and Clemson, South Carolina. So that's 4 of them. So I guess it's possible, but everybody else is kind of lined up. Alabama plays Auburn, Mississippi plays Mississippi State, and
LSU never had nobody. LSU, they're playing Texas A&M now. I think something like that.
A&M is their designated rival, but it's not been going on long.
Yeah, that wouldn't be. I think Miami LSU would be sexier as a rival game at the end of the year.
Sexier, but it doesn't make a whole lot of. It makes sense. It would be a fun game to watch, but I don't understand what the tie is between LSU and Miami.
I feel like I think the cities are they're both. I just think I've been to Louisiana, I've been to LSU. I mean, I've been to not Baton Rouge, but I've been to New Orleans and everything. I just think that a lot of the players are a lot similar to each other. They're more similar to each other than they are different from each other. And I've always liked LSU because of the way they kind of remind me of Miami a little bit. Plus they've kicked our behinds the last few times too. So I got a respect level for them. But we have no rival game at all. Like playing Pitt at the end of the year is like whatever, you know. And we were trying to line up teams that we could and really LSU was really the only one that didn't really have a strong rivalry.
Yeah.
We're talking about Notre Dame. Notre Dame got USC, you know. LSU was the only one that didn't have a strong rivalry that was kind of close, you know. that I
Yeah,
thought of.
that's a tough one. So you guys talked that over on your channel.
Yeah,
That's a
we're
good
trying to figure
question.
out. We're trying to figure out what team would be best for Miami to have a rival with during rivalry week because that's the biggest week in college football. And we didn't. Only the team I came up with was like LSU. Didn't come up with anybody. But as for a bowl, what team I prefer to play in a bowl game, it really doesn't matter. I mean,
So hopefully the CBS sports projections don't come through because they've got you headed to Shreveport, Louisiana,
yep.
the Independence Bowl against UAB.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Serious.
Yeah, you don't want to play that
Oh
game. It's
my
just you
God.
can't gain anything from doing that.
You can lose a hell of a lot though.
Yep.
You could be the laughingstock of college football, even if you let that game be close.
Yeah, you got nothing to gain there.
You said UAB, University of Alabama, Birmingham.
Yep.
Didn't they just get their football program back a couple years ago?
Just did last year.
Oh my
Just got
God.
they are playing for the Conference USA Championship tomorrow. I have a huge UAB fan so that watches all the time.
my my
Calls
niece
me up every Saturday night with a UAB report for me.
my niece is in medical school at University of Alabama, Birmingham.
Nice.
My company, the company I work for, probably most of upper management went to University of Alabama, Birmingham. So I know a lot about that school. Yeah, my sister's daughter is at she's in med school right now at UAB. So
You got some brains in the family, Zoe.
her it skipped me a lot. It skipped me. It went to her and my daughters. It skipped me.
Yeah, that's my situation here.
Oh
I
man.
checked out another site. They've got you in the same spot. Hopefully, that's not a trend working here. Yeah, I think we might be able to do a little bit better than that. That seems to be the bottom rung for the ACC right there. Is the Shreveport. The part of the bowl allure of getting to a bowl game is obviously it's a reward for a good season, and you get to hang out with your buddies and play football obviously at the end of the trip, but you get to sightsee and that sort of thing. But when it's 42 degrees out and rainy in Shreveport, Louisiana, then that's not necessarily what a bowl trip's supposed to be like.
I would you can't turn it down, but if you offer me a UAB game, I'm like, if you're offering me a game against a Conference USA opponent, I don't know if I really want to accept that. Unless, I mean, seriously, I'm just being honest with you. It's like playing FIU again, FAU. The only team in one of those conferences you could play is UCF. Or I mean, come on, this is what I'm saying. Like those two wins, yeah, they were wins and get to go to a bowl game, but you might be playing UAB. That would be that to me that would be embarrassing. I'm serious. I mean, there's no only thing that's more embarrassing is being Florida State. Not making the first hand, not making a bowl game in like umpteen years.
Now, I visited 3 sites. The last one was Sports Illustrated, and they had you in Shreveport as well. Now, where'd I go? Wherever this is. Oh, the Sporting News. You're going to like this better. They've got you going to Jacksonville to play South Carolina.
Yep, and that would be it would be I would rather play that game, but if we lose that game, I have to hear it. I am in the country. I am in Gamecock country. I am 15, 20 minutes away from this school. I am in all of my coworkers are either Clemson or Carolina fans. So it would be we would and then the last time they played us, they beat us under Al Golden. So it would be we would have to win that game in order, or I'll have to take about a month off of work. I'll have to take a month off work because they would kill me here.
That makes things interesting.
But it will be a better game.
You can handle it.
Yeah, I handled it last time. This is what we get. We get opportunity and to be honest with you, I would love to see that game because I would love to see how Rick coaches against a team like Carolina who actually gave Clemson kind of fits.
Yeah.
For a half in that game. You know, um, would your I've still never seen our offense bail our defense out. And Carolina, they got a receiver on that team. I don't know his name. I think number 9 that he can flat out play.
Yeah, they got Debo Samuel. They've got
Debo.
Brian Edwards. Both of those
Mm-hmm.
guys can play. They put up over 600 yards of total offense up against Clemson. They scored 35, and
Mm-hmm.
they, Zoe, had the ball inside the 5 2 other times where they went for it on 4th down instead of kicking the field goal. They could have put up 49 points in that game.
Yeah. And our offense have put up 49 points in 2 years. It's just amazing. It amazes me. It amazes me how you have a team with less offensive talent and Will Muschamp as the head coach. I have no idea who called them plays in South Carolina, but they've had some shootouts. Didn't they? Who did they beat? Was it Mississippi State or Ole Miss that they came back and they had a huge shootout against them with like 50 something? They actually had some shootouts. Their offense is actually pretty good this year. And it's like,
yeah,
where's our offense at? This is what amazes me. It's like you really can't name too many players that play for the University of South Carolina, but you can see their offense can move the ball.
Well, you know, I can name some players that play for South Carolina.
Yeah, the average person can, average. How many of those players go into the league off that offense?
Go into the league, 1 or 2.
Yeah.
Debo Samuel's going to go to the league.
He's definitely good. He's definitely a good player.
And they got this other kid that plays the other wide receiver position. I like Brian Edwards.
Yeah.
So let's see. You may like this. I don't know what kind of trip this is for you. It seems kind of far. Music City Bowl, Nashville against Auburn. Somebody's mentioned that.
I don't want to go. I'm not going to Tennessee. I'm not going to Tennessee. I'm not driving through the mountains. I'm not going to Tennessee. Nashville, Tennessee, for me, from here to Nashville, I can Google that real quick, but that's through the mountains. So even if it's 8 hours, it's probably about 6 hours through the mountains. And I don't want to be in the mountains that long. I do not. I mean, if they were to go, I would. I'll watch the game from Columbia. I'm not going to Freeport. I think only way I'm going to a bowl game is if it's which is the only 3 that you mentioned. Shreveport 3-4 times.
How about Charlotte?
Florida 1 time. I will go to Charlotte in a minute. I mean, I can go there and be home the next day. I could go there and be home the same night.
Okay. So there's 2 possibilities because the Belk Bowl is in that ACC slot. So we got Clemson alum 98 on here. He's actually worked out a 3-way rivalry switch that works. This actually makes a lot of sense. So Texas, since they lost Texas A&M to the SEC, they've been without their last week rivalry game. They've been playing Kansas. They played Kansas this year as their last game. Well, that makes no sense. So you take Texas A&M, you have them play their out-of-conference rivalry game, get them back to playing Texas every year. Texas A&M, that frees up LSU. They get to play you.
I love that. Or I would play Texas.
You just want to play a good team.
Exactly. I want to play a team with a name. I'm serious. I mean, you look at the speed of LSU, you look at the speed of Texas, and you look at, I mean, Miami, Florida and Texas has always been compared to football as well. Those 2 states have always been. Somebody said USC, but USC plays Notre Dame. That's too far across country to go to USC. As a rivalry game.
Counter punch here, Zoe, because if it's a rivalry, it's got to make sense geographically, except for the USC Notre Dame game. The rest of them all are
pretty close. They're all pretty close. Florida State, Auburn, Alabama. Sure. We don't have anybody. The only team that we have that we could have played would be something like UCF or South Florida. UCF is better than South Florida right now. To be honest with you, I would love for them to kick out Syracuse or Pittsburgh or Boston College out of the ACC and put one of those 2 teams in the ACC, to be honest with you.
I love how you're thinking, because about 2 years ago in the offseason, I restructured all of college football and I went to 6 leagues of 12 teams each. That's exactly what I did. I kicked out Louisville. I kicked out Boston College, Pitt, and Syracuse because I made a Big East conference. And then I brought in Central Florida and South Florida and made a 12-team ACC.
Yep.
Same thing.
Yep. Well, I would love to see that, because if you put first off, it's too much talent in Florida for Miami, Florida, Florida State to get anyway. You know what I'm saying? So you're not going to get all of them. So Central Florida, they're being disrespected right now. They're being disrespected right now. I mean, they're not even in the conversation, and they haven't lost a game in 2 years. You know, they're being disrespected right now, and to me, that's unfair. You can't say they can't compete. This is what I love about the NCAA. You can't say they can't compete if you don't even give them opportunities to compete. How do you feel like they can't compete? They have a lot of talent on their team. You don't know how good they are unless you put them in a playoff. And how do you not put them in a playoff? If there's any one loss team ahead of them, is disrespect to those guys who bust their ass for 2 straight years. And because they play in a smaller conference and they don't play in a Power 5 conference, they're not being let in.
Well, what's funny about people's criticism that they don't play anyone and that they need to be given a chance, which they do, is that when they were given the chance last year against Auburn, who played in the SEC championship game, played in the conference championship game of most likely the best conference, UCF beat them in the Peach Bowl.
Yeah. So it's unfair. I just think that it's that offense is amazing. They have skills all the way around. And it's a bunch of Florida guys on that team. And I would, when you got a team that's coached well, a Florida team that's coached well, there is no, I don't even think Alabama would dog them. Do I believe they would beat Alabama? No, not at all. But do I believe Alabama will beat them by 3 touchdowns? I don't think the pride of that coach and the pride of that team would allow them to get beat by 3 touchdowns by Alabama. I think Alabama will be in for a dogfight. I believe that their offense is so amazing, the way they call plays. I believe Alabama will be in for a dogfight. They would be kind of surprised. Hell, what was that team? Coastal. Who was that team that shocked Alabama? The Citadel. Anything can happen on a football game, even though they end up beating them down. But I mean, UCF is not the Citadel.
Yeah, the Citadel was kicking a field goal to go up in the third quarter.
Mm-hmm. And UCF is not the Citadel.
No.
Yeah.
So this isn't going to happen, but if Pitt would beat Clemson in the ACC championship game, you know that UCF beat Pitt by 31 points. They would have a win over the ACC champion.
They got to win over ACC opponent, ACC Coastal champion.
Yeah, they
if
do.
They was in ACC Coastal right now, they'll probably be the ACC Coastal champion. They'll probably be playing Clemson.
I would bet that they would be.
Yeah. I mean, that's why I say they need to do a realignment real bad, because there are teams that, like I say, no disrespect to Pitt, no disrespect to Syracuse, and nothing like that. You got to wait for a minute. No disrespect to Pitt. Go sit down. It's my daughter. She waiting to let me know if she want to go somewhere. Yeah. No disrespect to Pitt, no disrespect to Syracuse and teams like that, but like you say, geographically, they're not in a place where you can get the talent that UCF can get. Or that South Florida can get.
How close is Syracuse, Louisville, or Pitt to the Atlantic coast? Just talking about the name of the conference.
But you know why they do it though, right? It's a basketball conference. It's for basketball, because now you take those teams out of basketball. Now you take them out of the ACC. You take Syracuse and well, you can keep Duke in. You keep North Carolina in.
Basketball conference, but it still makes more money playing football.
Yeah, I mean, we still got North Carolina and Duke, which are two of the biggest. You know what I'm saying? And to be honest with you, Miami's coming along basketball. They're coming along real good in basketball right now. So, I mean, you still got schools, and I just feel like there's no reason for Pitt, Boston College, or Syracuse to be in the ACC at all. I don't know how that happened. I don't know what happened, but there's no reason for those schools to be in the ACC.
Well, they wanted to build up the basketball, plus split into 2 divisions so they could play a championship game and do all those things.
Bring in South Florida and Central Florida.
They didn't want to be left out. Well, so I want to stay in the good graces of your daughter. So I'll let you go.
I appreciate it. Plus, I got to work in the morning, and I don't want to. I appreciate coming on, though. Whatever bowl game we go to, Whenever when would they announce them? When did they announce them?
Sunday.
Huh?
Sunday.
I hope it's early. Is it a late Sunday announcement, or do you know?
Oh, it'll come out. So the playoffs come out at noon, and then it'll be 5, 6 o'clock in the afternoon, something in that range.
So if you want, if once we find out who we play, if you want to, I can come on Sunday. If you want me to come on for a few minutes, and we could discuss that game, whether or not I'll be attending or whether or not I'm happy
I would
with
love
the.
to do that.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, I can't do it Sunday because I'll be locked in at work.
Oh,
But
that's right. You do work.
we'll get together soon.
That's fine. That's fine. I appreciate you.
Thanks,
I,
though.
I definitely wasn't coming. I had people say, "Man, come on, go on tonight." So, nope. And then you had text me. He's like, "I was like, I'll go on Mark, but I'm not. I don't feel like doing a whole show tonight." So,
I
but I
appreciate you
definitely,
looking out for me.
I appreciate you. You always look out for me, Mark. Thank you, man. I appreciate you for real.
Thanks, though. Check him out at 1219 Alonzo 1219. The family, the U family, of course. They're on
And
YouTube. All right, so
thanks to everybody in the chat, man. Thanks to everybody in the chat. And like I said, if you haven't subscribed, subscribe to Mark. Share his videos, even if you don't like me. Like him. I'm not the easiest person in the world to get along with. Only Mark likes me. Everybody else don't like. So y'all subscribe to the channel, man. Share the channel. Show love, man. Thanks, Mark.
Have a good one.
You too, brother.
Thanks, man.
All right.
The one and only Alonzo 1219, the U family. Check out his channel and involve yourself in the debate over there as well. All right, this is Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. I need to be sending a link to Tony Gerdeman from the Ozone, who was so graciously accepting of backing up his appearance here a half hour to 7:30, so we can talk some Ohio State football. So excuse me a quick second here, and I will get this link out to Tony, and I can take a phone call at the same time. I believe I'm that skilled. Somebody would like to give me a call at 860-325-3687. We can talk a little college football before Tony comes on. That'll take him a couple minutes to jump on here. I've done my best to get you guys set up for championship weekend with multiple videos on all the conference championships, the Alabama side, the Georgia side of the SEC championship game, the Utah side, the Washington side of the Pac-12 that's kicking off at 8 o'clock or about 8:10 Eastern time. The Northwestern side, the Ohio State side from a couple bloggers there. And we got Tony Gerdeman coming up to talk Ohio State football, plus my preview and prediction. And also my preview and prediction of the Big 12 over at SG1 Sports. And I cut a different version here at Mark Rogers TV of my Big 12 prediction, plus the Texas side, the Oklahoma side, the Clemson side, the Pitt side, and my ACC championship game predictions coming up later tonight. All right, I will be locked in on Utah and Washington. Should we do a live stream after the game? You guys can let me know if you care to do a live stream. Otherwise, I will cut my instant analysis of the game. And late night tonight, we'll check out the MAC championship, which is ongoing right now. But I like to catch all the conference championship games as best I can. Tomorrow might be a little bit difficult with 8 games going on at the same time between noon and midnight. But I will definitely be watching the Big 12, the SEC, and the Big 10. And definitely will be watching the ACC on my second monitor. And then if the Buckeyes are blowing out the Wildcats and I've got a good game going with Pitt unexpectedly hanging with Clemson, then we'll make the switch. But that's the game plan right now, is that it's going to be the Big 12 game at noon. Then, of course, I'll lock in on the SEC and then the Big 10 that night. And the other games are a bit off to the side unless they get intriguing. We've got Tony Gerdeman on the line from the Ozone to talk Ohio State football. Of course, the Buckeyes in a fourth conference championship game for them since the Big Ten went to this format in 2011 and the first trip for the Wildcats of Northwestern. How you doing tonight, Tony?
Doing pretty good. Looking forward to a full day tomorrow of maybe some crazy action.
Okay. Well, expand upon that.
Well, it just seems like maybe everything is too cookie cutter and planned out for tomorrow as in terms of who's going to win, and everything's going to be chalk. Maybe tomorrow won't be. And, it seems like when I guess when you least expect it, you should expect it maybe.
I totally agree. And that's one thing, and one particular reason why Vegas capitalizes on parlays is that you may think you've got a really good selection here. Then, oh, well, I really feel strongly about this one here. Oh, let's tack this one on. Oh, I got 3 or 4 games that I feel pretty strong about. Vegas knows probabilities, and the probabilities are, even though there's maybe 75 to 80% chance that you're going to nail each one of those, once you start to do the math, the probability of getting all those lined up is minuscule. And that's what we're looking at tomorrow. Is we're looking at Clemson's a 26-point favorite. Yeah. Ohio State's a 2-touchdown favorite. Alabama's practically a 2-touchdown favorite. And Oklahoma's a pretty substantial 7 to 8 point pick against Texas. But if you add all those up together, is there a chance? Sure, there's a very high chance that something's going to come unglued and not stick to the formula.
Well, you mentioned Northwestern being a 14-point underdog. All of their games this season have been decided by 14 points or less. So that's right in there. And to expect Ohio State to maybe do more than that would be something that hasn't happened for Northwestern yet this year.
So it's a great point and gives indication as to what my prediction was, at least in regards to the point spread and where I've backed that up financially at this point. The Wildcats at a full 2 touchdowns. I didn't expect it to be quite that high. I wouldn't be shocked. Of course, Ohio State has the athletes. And anytime you look at 14 points in particular, it could be a really good game. It could be a touchdown game, obviously, with 10 minutes left. And then the Buckeyes tack on a TD and a field goal and pull away and win by 17. And it was a good game at 17 all or 20 to 17, but certainly it turns out 34-17. So point spreads are tricky, and there's a reason why. That's a tough curve to get in front of. What would be the most likely of the games to fall to the underdog for you?
Oh, man. Maybe Georgia, because they're the best of the underdogs. Mm-hmm. We talk about how Alabama is the best Alabama team ever, the best college football team ever. But if Georgia is as good as people say, then maybe they're going to be in the game longer than anybody else, and they have the ability to maybe defensively hold Alabama down a little bit and make things closer than people expect. You with like Northwestern and Ohio State, I think Ohio State's offense right now is clicking. Northwestern's offense really doesn't scare you too much. So, I feel decent about Ohio State being able to cover that. Clemson, Pittsburgh, I'm just going to stay away from that. I don't need to get involved with that. Same with Oklahoma, Texas. There's the revenge factor, but as we saw last week with Ohio State, Michigan, revenge only carries you so far. And with those two, I'm not. Would you be surprised with any outcome with Oklahoma and Texas?
No, not at all.
Yeah,
I picked Texas to win the conference at the start of the season, so I was dead right on Utah, Washington, Texas, Oklahoma, Georgia, Alabama when the season started. I had Clemson and Ohio State in their respective championship games, but I had them playing Wisconsin and Miami. So I'm just for ego's sake pulling for Texas to complete my prediction from the preseason, but I'm not necessarily picking them to win the game. But I do like the 8 points. And I would like to see it's possibly a misnomer. I don't know that anybody's run the numbers. You hear this, it's difficult to beat a team twice in the same season. Well, I understand the thought process behind that, and I don't disagree with it, but I also don't agree with it because I don't know what the numbers would say over a long period of time in those situations.
Well, in basketball, they say it's hard to do it 3 times in a row.
Sure.
3 times in a It must not be that difficult to do it 2 times in a row in basketball, or else it'd be a saying in basketball, right? So, I don't know. The football is too different. We just don't see it that often. And it sounds like something that's fun to say. I'm sure it is difficult. It's difficult to beat them the first time, so the second time would be difficult as well.
I heard Joel Klatt say this week, and I have great respect for him and follow his analysis. But he was putting the Ohio State's challenge, comparing it to the 2014 result, and basically saying, and I don't know if this was his intent, but the way it was stated was basically, well, if Ohio State goes out and beats Northwestern 59-0, then they should be able to, trump Oklahoma. Well, to expect them to go out and win 59-0 is a bit ridiculous. I don't know that we could expect anyone to do that. But what do you make of this Oklahoma-Ohio State comparison?
I think it's interesting for a number of reasons. You mentioned the 59-0. If that is the bar, Ohio State has set that bar, and if they have to reach that again, that's unfair to Ohio State to have to be able to repeat that performance. I do think they need to be more impressive than Oklahoma. But then you've also got, Oklahoma still doesn't have the bad loss that Ohio State does to Purdue. Oklahoma, that game is at noon. So Ohio State will know what they need to do, but that could almost be as much of a hindrance as a help, because they are going to look at that score and already have maybe a score in mind of what they need to do. Urban Meyer has said that that won't be the case, but you have to expect that it's going to be the case in some form or fashion. The score will be known. They'll know the game before they get out there in warm-ups. So, but they have to be careful not to coach the game to reach a certain point total. You have to beat Northwestern, because if you don't do that, then you lose all hope. But it's going to be interesting to see how they marry the two. And we've seen before where, teams try to set a bar, and by worrying about the bar, they're missing everything beneath it, and the opponent can get the upper hand because of that.
And as you mentioned, they're no joke. From an athletic standpoint, there's no comparison between the two rosters, but they somehow figure it out. And this particular season, I've mentioned Northwestern maybe to you in the past in regards to being able to play, upper division Big Ten type football in recent years under Pat Fitzgerald. But they have that game or two typically every year where, okay, they weren't on point fundamentally. Yeah. Therefore, Michigan, I remember Tennessee in a bowl game, even though Tennessee had a lower ranking and less wins, the athleticism of those kind of teams showed up, and all of a sudden, it's really ugly. Mm-hmm. It seems almost to be the inverse this year. They got off to the rough start. They lost to inferior teams, especially the Akron being the famous example. But they've played up to their competition. They almost beat Michigan. They almost beat Notre Dame. And then they beat everyone that would challenge them in the Big Ten Western Division, and were given no respect. We're an underdog in all those games, but they beat Wisconsin, Iowa, Purdue, and a decent Minnesota team, as it turned out to be.
Yeah, I think there's a point this season where not too long ago they were being outscored by their opponents, and yet here they are still, winning most of their games. The Michigan game, they started 17-0, and then you mentioned the athleticism. Like, Michigan's athleticism eventually wore out. The depth that Michigan had compared to Northwestern. But they have the ability. They have a veteran quarterback, Clayton Thorson, I think, has 51 career starts. They've got, the young running back, Bowser, who has only played half of the season, but they've been, 25, 27 carries a game. I still think that what they do offensively, while they will try to spread you out, they don't do it with as dynamic athletes as we've seen, as Ohio State has seen with like TCU, Maryland, Purdue. There's no Rondale Moore for Northwestern, and Ohio State fans should breathe a sigh of relief because of that. So it's a little bit like last week with Michigan, where they would run multiple tight ends and a fullback. Sure, if one of those guys breaks free, he's only going 20 or 30 yards. He's not going 90 like Anthony McFarland or Rondale Moore or Kevontae Turpin or any other of these guys they face. So while Northwestern may move the ball, they're going to have to go, first down, move the chains and score that way. And that gives Ohio State an advantage. But Ohio State's going to have to do the same thing because of Northwestern's defense. They're zone. They keep everything in front of you. So it's going to be an interesting matchup of, Ohio State's offense has to stay patient. with their passing game, which they are a patient offense. They've gone games without taking shots downfield. Dwayne Haskins is fine throwing 7-yard slants and stop routes. So while it's a different defense that they'll be facing from last week, where Michigan's man defense set up for Ohio State perfectly, this is a little bit differently, but Ohio State's patient enough that I think they will eventually wear Northwestern out like Michigan did this season.
Got Tony Gerdeman on the line from the Ozone. You got to join him right there, theozone.net for Ohio State football coverage, and also Tony's podcast. When is that released, Tony?
The Buckeye Weekly podcast every Wednesday morning, Tuesday at midnight-ish. Also, we do an instant reaction after the game, after every game. So that one gets released Saturday night, Sunday morning. So look for those as well.
I've yet to check it out, but that instant analysis reaction right after the Michigan game must have been something.
Yeah, that was we try to keep them in about 30 minutes. That one I think went about 55 minutes. So there was a lot of people, there's a lot of feedback from people. Surprisingly, they enjoyed that one. So we had plenty to talk about. I think a lot of it was just like, how did that happen?
Yeah, I try to detach myself from emotion when making these selections, not just being an Ohio State fan, but in any situation, having a feeling, because it's easy to see the results on Saturday night and think, oh, I should have picked that one right because, man, I had a feeling. Well, yeah, it's easy to in hindsight, but that was a game in which I just kind of succumbed to the track record of the 11 games and then the 6 common opponents and just thought, this is overwhelming that Michigan is going to win this game based on how they're playing versus like opponents versus Ohio State, especially the quality opponents, Penn State, Michigan State, thinking of somebody else, and just the Wisconsin effort, the Nebraska game in particular. But as it got to about Wednesday, I just had this thought that Ohio State, they're going to show up. They're going to be a different team. That crowd is going to be energized just to push them. And Urban Meyer, and just all of it came back as this is still a more talented roster, not substantially, but it is decidedly a more talented roster. And I just have confidence they're going to fix enough to get it done.
It's funny. I've talked to a lot of people, and my comments are a lot like yours, where the further I got away from that Maryland game, the better I felt about Ohio State's chances. And Tom Moore, who's on the podcast with me, said that that's why he did his staff pick. We do a staff pick every week. We release it on Fridays. And that's why he wrote his on like Tuesday, because he could just feel himself feeling better about Ohio State's chances, which felt kind of like, we've seen them tank before. Michigan has played well. At what point are you like really feeling like this, or is, just getting confused by the closer you get to the game, you feel better about Ohio State's chances. And I ended up going with Michigan by 7. I think he did as well. But we did a podcast every day that week. On Thursday, I solicited Michigan fans' concerns on Twitter. So all of the Michigan fans who follow me, of which there are quite a few actually, they sent me all of their concerns. And pretty much everything you saw in that game was part of it. Jim Harbaugh clamming up with the offense. The Ohio State's inside routes over the middle was there. And then on Friday, we did a show which was what needs to happen for Ohio State to win. And everything you saw there, we talked about it in the Friday show. So that the Thursday and Friday, Michigan fans described what they didn't want to see. Friday, we described what you'll need to see. And you saw it all there. But nobody, I was telling somebody on the field at like 55-32 or whatever, if you had picked this score, your organization would have fired you. You can't go like, yeah, I'm feeling like 62-39, and then they'd show you the door.
Especially for those of us that have been watching this game play out for years, there's just something that doesn't feel right about a 62-39 Ohio State Michigan game. Isn't this thing supposed to be 17-13? Yeah.
It's exactly you look back, there's some blowouts in the Rich Rodriguez era, but that doesn't really even count, if somebody's scoring 32 or 39, then Ohio State is scoring 42, like in the 2006 game. This one was just way different. And the fact that Ohio State gave up 39 points and people come out of that game feeling good about the defense is a little bizarre, because you think back to the 2006 game, and then once they got beat by Florida after that, people were like, well, yeah, we should have seen that coming because they gave up 39 to Michigan and then 41 to Florida. You look at Ohio State's defensive season this year, and they're like, hey, they look pretty good against Michigan. And I'm like, 39 points, though. But, some of that was late, and it was Michigan had to score. But that was a game where – and then I asked a few of the players this week, what's more fun, beating them in double overtime like in 2016 or blowing them out like this time? And KJ Hill said this was more fun. I think Jordan Fuller, the safety, said this was more fun because he played more in it. But Isaiah Prince, the left tackle, all Big Ten, first team all Big Ten, said it doesn't matter how Ohio State's beat Michigan, how they beat them, just as long as they beat them, so that Michigan does not have bragging rights. They can't say that they beat Ohio State. And as long as they get their gold pants, they don't care how it is.
Well, second to Ohio State is your coverage of Michigan football. So how do you take the state of the program, which seems to be in solid shape from where I'm sitting, but obviously the reaction is going to be based on the game. And sure, they have to win. I don't want to de-emphasize that game's everything or close to it in regards to that being the rivalry, but also that's also the team that's in your way. So Harbaugh has to get it done at some point, but I'm not ready to pull the plug and just give up hope if I were a Michigan fan on their ability to break this through at some point.
No, I'm with you. And it's hard to blame Jim Harbaugh. You should blame Urban Meyer, basically, because that's been the problem with Michigan football since Harbaugh arrived. And yeah, I don't think anybody would have expected him to go 0-4 against Ohio State in his first 4 opportunities. But when you think about Jim Harbaugh getting Michigan back to where they were, he's got them there now. They have been top 5, top 10 each of the last few years, top 12. So they are in the mix. It's just this last game against Ohio State, they haven't been able to get over the hurdle. And that's Urban Meyer's fault. You look at how he is against all of his rivals. And so, maybe that will change here shortly. There's all of this speculation about Urban Meyer's future. But I think Michigan is fine with where they are. Or I don't know if I think Michigan is fine. I don't know if they think they're fine. But Michigan has never really been like a top 3, top 4 program year after year. They can get there. But overall, this is what they are. This is who they are. And if they think they can be better, that's fine. Who's going to do it for you? I mean, I think we all agreed that Jim Harbaugh was the guy to do that. And he's showing that he can get them to this point. Maybe once Urban Meyer is gone, he can get them beyond that. We'll see.
So this is a great point that you make, and it's been in my head ever since the criticism following the results last Saturday, but I just didn't directly verbalize it this way, but you just did, is that I've been watching Ohio State and Michigan and the rest of college football since the late 70s. And Michigan's not had a stretch of football like a Florida State, like a Miami did, like Ohio State has over the last 10 to 12 years. They have not had a string of we're losing 0-1 or maybe 2 games. That hasn't happened. They won a national championship in 1997. They've had a smattering of a couple other seasons, like a 2006, where they had a top 5 finish. 1985, they had a really good season, which they went 10-1-1, finished in the top 2 or 3 in the country. But other than that, yes, they have the story tradition and all the wins because of the compilation. And, I'm certainly not trying to downgrade Michigan's history or their status in college football. But since I've been watching, and certainly I can read a record book to see what happened before that, but since the 70s, yes, they've been very good and one of the top 10 programs in the country most of that time. But there's a lot of 9-3, 10-2 over and over and over and over, and 8-4s, and that's, it's not like Lloyd Carr was winning like Urban 91% of his games, and then all of a sudden they're awful, and then Harbaugh comes back and he can't get them to Alabama status. No, he's going 10-2, 10-3.
Yeah, they're somewhere stuck between like the 90s Tennessee and Penn State now-ish. They're not really Texas or Oklahoma because both of those programs have had those runs that you talked about. So this is about as good as it has gotten for Michigan. And if people think they can do better, that's fine. But we've seen what happens. Like, this is a bit of an off example, but Glenn Mason in Minnesota, when Minnesota thought they could do better than Glenn Mason, I don't know, who do you turn to other than Michigan? And then what do you expect from them beyond that? If your coach doesn't get a national title in 3 years or a playoff appearance, are you firing them? Because when you put restrictions like that, you really, that puts a lot of pressure on a guy, but it's also maybe like not realistic. And Michigan should compete for national titles because they invest, and they have resources. I think Jim Harbaugh is underachieving in terms of recruiting, and so maybe they can do better there with somebody else. But I don't see any reason right now. If anybody should be fired, Michigan should be firing Urban Meyer.
I should challenge myself to recite these scores off memory because I like to try to do that sort of thing, but I'm too lazy and you don't want to sit here for 15 minutes. We'll go to Bo Schembechler's run here at the end of his career, the last 10 years or so. 10-2, 10-2, 8-4, 10-2, 9-3, 8-4, 9-3, 6-6, 10-1-1, 10-2, 8-4, 9-2-1, 10-2, 9-3, 10-2, 9-0-3. Remember that one with the 3 ties. 8-4, 8-4, 9-4. Yeah, so very good teams, typically finishing roughly top 10 to 15 in the country, but not going on that Miami or Florida State or recent Alabama or Ohio State or Clemson run of basically you win every game except for one season after season after season.
Yeah,
they've never been that.
You could probably take the last 15 or 20 years of records of Michigan and Wisconsin, put them side by side, and have people guess which is which. And
I'll take Wisconsin.
But like if you did a blind resume of them and say which do you think is which, I don't know that people would be able to tell the difference.
Yeah. Good stuff with Tony Gerderman from the Ozone. Before we let you go, Tony, any last notes on this one? Yeah, not necessarily the marquee matchup that Buckeye fans were looking for or to impress the College Football Playoff Committee. I just hope that the name Northwestern and the stereotype of workmanlike lunch pail guys that don't have a lot of speed and athleticism doesn't resonate too much, that an Ohio State 34-20 win is just like, well, that was nothing.
Yeah, and they have done that a little bit this season where maybe they've not taken their opponent as seriously as they should have, like Maryland, for instance. Purdue, you could say, even though I think Purdue just blitzed them and they had no answer for it. And then you're coming off of the Michigan game where you're feeling pretty good about yourself. They let them celebrate for a little bit, and then they turn their attention towards this game. But the Big Ten Championship is what that is their goal every year. So now that they have reached the precipice of it, I would expect them to be locked in. You remember last year they started out pretty well against Wisconsin in the Big Ten Championship game. And then a lot of it, I think, is because JT Barrett was hurt. They pretty much just went to protect their lead, and the score got closer, and it wasn't as, as dominating a performance as it could have been. This year, they don't really have that same need to protect their quarterback. It's not like Dwayne Haskins is coming into this game off of a meniscus tear or whatever. So they'll be able to go full out for the entire 60 minutes, and I think they'll need to. And when Jim Tressel was the coach at Ohio State, he used to put some real poundings on Pat Fitzgerald, and those two remained close. Urban Meyer and Pat Fitzgerald are close. So if Urban Meyer has the chance, he's probably going to try to put a number on Pat Fitzgerald and then just hope that Pat will forgive him afterwards. But again, you see enough of these Ohio State games and you see them struggle against teams they shouldn't. I expect Ohio State to win. If they don't, nobody could be all that surprised.
And I also was stating that, Tony, from the standpoint of the selection committee or public perception that, yeah, Ohio State went out there and won 34-20, and it was only Northwestern, and they're not fast or athletic or really that good. So that's really not impressing us.
Right. Well, the other danger is if they do go out and blow them out, then you're like, the committee could be like, well, this was not a quality opponent. This tells you how bad things are in the Big Ten.
Absolutely.
And so, as we've seen with the committee, they'll use whatever data they have to confirm what they already believe.
I was saying the same thing to Michigan fans last week when they were skeptical about what may shake out for a college football playoff appearance if Alabama doubled up in the SEC or whatever. And they were like, and I said, what you need to have happen is you need to win a respectable game against Ohio State, but not kill them so bad that people are like, yeah, that Ohio State team's awful. We saw them almost lose to Maryland. So you don't want to beat them 34-7. You want to beat them 27-17, respectable win kind of thing. Yeah, it's an interesting thing. And like you say, it's funny that Urban Meyer speaks to the mindset of the players going into that game based on the Big 12 result. But of course, we can only conjecture how it would affect play calling versus, let's say, Texas wins and Ohio State's up 24-14 in the second half. Yeah. Are they just protecting that lead and sitting on the ball and punting and pretty comfortable with that lead versus they're up 24-14 and Oklahoma won? They beat Texas by 3 touchdowns.
Yeah. Well, and it won't just, it's not just necessarily the coaches. It could be Dwayne Haskins, whose first read is to dump it off for a 3-yard gain versus, we need points because I saw the score. So he might be taking shots that he shouldn't because he's feeling the pressure of wanting to get the Buckeyes on the board as much as possible, as often as possible. And even though the coaches might be talking to them about that, they've got their phones until about 4 o'clock. They can see all of the scores they need to, and they know what they need to get. And that's where I don't know what the coaches will tell the players other than do what we've been doing all week in practice, and then hopefully they'll listen and won't try to press. And hopefully the coaches aren't feeling the pressure themselves, and then the players feed off of that as well.
All right, Tony, I always enjoy the conversation, enjoy the insight and the information. You do a great job, and enjoy the game, championship weekend, and we'll see what the result is actually on the field, the tangible result on Saturday night, and then we can only second guess what 13 people are going to decide on Sunday.
Yeah, just don't expect to be happy. Then you'll never be disappointed.
Absolutely. Thanks, Tony. Have a good one.
Have a good one.
All right, folks, taking things right up to the Pac-12 championship game. I think it kicks off in about 10 minutes. So I'm around for a phone call or two. If somebody wants to call at 860-325-3687, we'll take us right up to the Pac-12 championship game because I want to take this one in. I hate to miss any of them, especially in the Power 5, Utah and Washington. I will also check out the chat and see what you guys are up to on the chat room. I appreciate all the support, believe me, especially in recent days. Well, really for a long, long time. The frequent comments about the videos, about what we do here with the analysis, the debate, the previews, the predictions, everything that we do in breaking down college football. It was nice to hear from Bash Gaming, which reminds me, I need to jump on his question or his statement and my response. And I've got to go back now through 2 other conversations to remember. Yes. So he was pointing out that Frank Beamer has a larger say apparently in that room. So my question was going to be back to him, that what are our indications that Frank Beamer is being heard more so than anybody else in that college football playoff selection committee? So I'm not convinced of that. I just don't know. I'm not saying that that's not the case. I would hope that those people that are selected would be strong enough individuals to, not that you don't listen to the feedback, you can learn from others. I would certainly take that approach. If they want to name me to the selection committee, I'm listening to everyone, but I am not going to be overly persuaded. I'm going to continue to review the situation, review the teams, the resumes, the metrics, the numbers, the results within my own vacuum of this is how I analyze teams and compare teams okay, somebody just brought up a good point about an injury here, or brought up whatever it is, that certainly I can take that information and apply it to my own review. But I think I had a conversation. It might have been with Bash just a few weeks ago when he called, and we were kind of dissecting the dynamics of the committee, and I just kind of stated this, and it's no secret to people that work in committees and groups with various peoples, or in my case, like a management team, where you have different dynamics in that not everyone is equal in that room. They might be by title, they might be by position, or in this case, you've got 13 people discussing a matter and trying to come to a conclusion of the selection of 4 teams. So theoretically, and by structure, they all have an equal say, but that's just not realistic, and it's not true to life. Some people are stronger, they're more persuasive, they're more strong-willed, they're less giving, they're more determined, they're going to just be more persuasive, whether that by sheer force of will, or just they're more knowledgeable, or they're just a better debater. And then other people are more passive and more open to being influenced. Just how it is. So that's the best I can answer Bash's first point, in that Frank Beamer has too much say, too much influence on the committee. I don't have any indication of that. I don't know where he's getting that in particular. I might have to Google that and see what other media people out there have that same take. In terms of disassociating people from their schools, it would be impossible to select a playoff committee in which there was no ties to any particular teams, either formally or in terms of rooting interest, because that's why we love college football. That's why those particular people, or if I was selected or you were selected, we would be involved because we love the sport. Well, if you love something, then you have a passion that is attached to a particular team. I could be more neutral and unbiased today than I could have been when I was 20 years old. There's no question about that. So with age, for most people, not everyone, comes some level of wisdom, and also being able to distinguish your emotions and your fan interest versus what is the right thing to do, what's the objective thing to do, and what are we actually seeing on the field, and what do the numbers tell me. So those were the two components. I think Bash wanted to go to like 25 people on the committee. I don't necessarily see an issue with that, other than when you have people in a room and the numbers just don't make it conducive to good conversation. Once you get to 25 people, how in the world do you have anything less than a 4 or 5 hour meeting talking about all these different teams, all these different games that were played, and the matchups and the comparisons and the metrics with 25 people? But the strength in numbers is the strength of diversity of opinion, and there being less of a chance of any oddball opinion or outlier that makes no sense. Now, I'm all for outliers that actually bring common sense to a discussion, but there are also outliers that are just trying to be contrarian just to be contrarian, who might be saying, let's think of a good example. Oh boy, I can't come up with one this year based on the current circumstances, but they would come up with some kind of dumb metric or something that would elevate, Boise State to the Final Four. And so the more people you have involved, the less one particular voice becomes dominant, or a ridiculous take on the situation becomes a major player in the discussion. The more people involved, the more you dilute any one particular opinion. But it becomes dysfunctional at some point. You can't have 150 people voting because it becomes dysfunctional at some point. So I don't know what that perfect number is, but I would guess it would be somewhere between 13. And as Bash points out, that number drops down to 10 when either Oklahoma or Ohio State, in this case, in this scenario, comes up. Obviously, Ohio State has become the most controversial team of the short playoff era going back to 2014. They have basically been a controversial selection or omission every year. 2014, they were selected over TCU and Baylor. Although, again, I would argue, why was Oregon and Alabama given a free pass as one-loss teams as well? Regardless, the actual debate was between Ohio State, TCU, and Baylor. That was in 2014. 2015, there was not a legitimate debate because Ohio State lost to Michigan State head-to-head. Michigan State won the Big Ten, and Ohio State was left out, as they should have been. But football people and people just with any football acumen know that Ohio State was better than Michigan State. Ohio State was clearly one of the 4 best teams in the country. They were left out. They should have been left out, but there was this thought, especially once the playoff played out to 38-0 Alabama over Michigan State, that maybe we should just select the 4 best teams. Then Ohio State would be in it. Then in 2016, of course, they don't win the division. They don't win the Big Ten, but they have the better resume and the better record than Penn State, and they get put in and they get demolished. Then in 2017, they've got the conference championship. They've got the better wins than Bama, but they've got the blowout loss against Iowa. They've got 2 losses compared to the one for Alabama, and they are left out. So it's worked both ways for Ohio State, but they have been the linchpin. And this is pretty much the state of their program because they're elite. Therefore, they're always in the running, always in the conversation, or have been for 5 years now, 2014 through 18. So the only other school that's always been in the controversy or in the conversation and included is Alabama. Not even Clemson in 2014. Obviously, they joined in 2015 and made it to the national championship game, but Clemson would be that next team. So those 3 have been dominant in regards to always playing their way into or being right there. Obviously, Alabama's separated from the other 2 because they've always made it. But Alabama clearly has made it, except for last year. Of course, they were given a spot. Clemson has earned their position with an ACC championship and with either 0 or 1 loss all 4 years. We assume this season's finale. And then for the Buckeyes, because of the one bad loss the last 2 years, obviously that's been to their detriment. But it's just interesting that the Buckeyes have always been the controversial team in play. It's Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark. Original Gum. How you doing?
Hey, I'm doing just fine. I'm geared up for this Pac-12 championship game. I'm guessing you're not.
Well, for the Pac-12 championship, no. Yes, I am.
Yeah, I'm going to take your call and get off, and we're gonna watch some football. But what's on your mind?
All right, man. I'm on keep too long. I actually didn't even know is the Pac-12 championship on tonight? That shows you how much I was paying attention to it.
Yeah, they kick off in a couple minutes.
Okay, but 8 o'clock Eastern. That's actually earlier than normal for Pac-12 games.
Well, they want to play.
They're playing at midnight.
It shows you the condition of the Pac-12 and the perception of the Pac-12 compared to the other conferences, especially the big boys in the Big Ten and the SEC, is that they pretty much cater to television, and they're actually catering to the East Coast. You would think that they would want to play in prime time on the West Coast, but they're playing in prime time on the East Coast. It's 5 o'clock on the West Coast where people are still coming home from work. So it's kind of odd. And yes, the Pac-12 championship game has always been on Friday night.
Well, there you go. I learn something new every day. As far as catering to a certain group, I mean, I'm not sure if you ever lived out there. I was stationed in California for a little over a year, and I can go ahead and tell you that you would think, you and I are both college football guys. Anyone who's in your chat room who's from the South, gets it. All right, it's a whole culture. I went out there thinking that California, right? I should be seeing USC fans or Stanford or UCLA or something out there. I would go to Buffalo Wild Wings every Saturday and watch the games. I even got to rivalry week, okay? I was watching the Iron Bowl, and first of all, the place was half empty, and the people who were in there were watching baseball. All right. The West Coast, I'm telling you, they don't care unless you live in the cities. If you live in Los Angeles, where you got the football teams in there, they don't care. None of them do. I could not find a college football fan to save my life. I'm stationed in New Jersey now, and it's pretty much the same story. Yeah, it was good. It was called shock. But yeah, that's. I'm just going to guess that's why they don't cater to those fan bases out there.
Yeah, Ohio or college football. Yes, it's very much a Southern and heartland sport. It's a South and Midwest sport. Absolutely.
Yeah, without question. And then so, well, I want to run something by you. So you know me, I've been taking a stance this whole year saying that, you know, I don't think Alabama is going to get the nod this year if they were to drop a game they shouldn't. Like I said before, that LSU was winning against LSU was all or nothing, and I actually stand by that. I think the season would have played out very badly for Alabama if they'd have lost that game. And I also was saying that I hated it when these people were trying to say that Alabama could lose to Georgia and then still slide into the playoffs, knocking away both Ohio State and Oklahoma, regardless of what they do. I wouldn't have thought that was right, and honestly, I wouldn't want to got in that way. But I got to say, I just got to say this because someone made me just stop and think about this for a second. So Alabama finished 12-0, right? Along with Clemson and Notre Dame, they all finished 12-0. Mm-hmm. And everyone wants to say, no one wants to defend it, but everyone wants to say that Notre Dame is automatically in. They don't have to do anything. They don't have to worry about this week at all. They're just in. It doesn't matter. They're 12-0. And so then I'm trying to. That puts me in a position where I'm like, okay, so if Alabama does lose tomorrow, someone's really going to have to explain to me why a 12-0 Notre Dame deserves to get in, sliding by all of their most of their teams that they played, and a Alabama team that was also 12-0 and just had an extra game that they couldn't get by, why they wouldn't deserve it, even though they won all of their games by 24 or more points.
Yeah, it's a fair point. I totally agree. Yeah. Notre Dame's situation puts them either at an advantage or disadvantage, depending. If they had one loss, then they would not be in a position to back up their 11-1 record by beating another good team and winning a conference championship and having that on their resume. But putting themselves in the position of 12-0, they are not exposing themselves to playing a good team that they could possibly lose to. And yes, Alabama would be able to say, like Clemson, if they would inexplicably lose tomorrow night, hey, we did the same thing Notre Dame did, but they weren't exposed to the possibility of losing a 13th game.
Yeah, and it would just be, I can't even really imagine what the committee would want to do if the situation came that Alabama lost by a field goal and both Oklahoma and Ohio State won convincingly against their opponents.
Yeah.
Because, that would be a nightmare of a situation. There's really no way that they could get it. Well, I mean, I don't think there's any way they're going to get out of this without pissing off somebody, but.
No, it's impossible. Well, it's.
I think
if Alabama takes care of business, if they wipe Georgia out by 3 touchdowns or so, and either Ohio State or Oklahoma lose and the other one looks good and wins or just wins, then they've got a pretty clear-cut situation.
Right.
So there is a way for them to ease into the selection, but most likely Ohio State and Oklahoma are going to win, and they're going to have to make a selection there. That's going to be difficult. That's the most likely scenario, and Alabama wins, and then they can drop Georgia off the map. But the school that's going to be under ridicule is going to be Notre Dame. If they make they will make the playoff. If they get wiped out in one of these playoff games, my goodness, because there's a certain defense for pick your school that won its conference and only lost 0 or 1 game and got into the playoff and then lost. Like Florida State the first year. They won, they were 14-0. They won their conference. They were 14-0. Then they got trampled by Oregon. Okay, but nobody questioned whether they deserved to be there. They won the ACC and they were undefeated. Fine. They just happened to be blown out in that particular game. Michigan State, the same thing. Nobody questioned. Oh, well, they won the Big Ten, and they were 12-1 and won the Big Ten. So people thought, okay, maybe they're not that good, but there wasn't any question as to whether they should have been selected. It was, well, things didn't work out, and maybe Ohio State should have been there. They were better, whatever. But nobody questioned the selection, as opposed to Notre Dame, with their recent history of not being able to compete with elite teams when given the opportunity. If they go out there against Clemson in week 1 or the first playoff game, or Alabama, and lose, a 42-10 game, then the Notre Dame haters are just gonna feast on that.
Well, to be honest, I kind of hope, I really hope that happens. I hope they get in. I'm still kind of on the mindset that when the final playoff comes out, if, for example, we have what I'm sure your dream situation, and to be honest, mine too, happens, is where Oklahoma wins a field goal game, or even if they lose, and Ohio State demolishes Northwestern, and then so they get in. I'm actually kind of thinking the committee might even slide them up number 3 or something, because for a couple of reasons. A, there's not going to be a lot of people who are going to pass up an Alabama-Notre Dame game. The ratings will be off the chart.
Mm-hmm.
Not that they wouldn't be for Nick Saban and Urban Meyer to play as well.
Sure.
But you know what I mean. And they might honestly just want to make want to make a little statement and be like, look, we think Ohio State's much better than Notre Dame. So Notre Dame, here's your 4 spot. See, show us what you can do.
And that way you probably get 2 dream matchups. You either get, you get Alabama, Notre Dame, and then you get an Alabama, Ohio State, or Clemson. Either one still turns out to be, that storyline of another Alabama Clemson game or another Nick Saban, Urban Meyer showdown. So it works out for 2 massive showdowns there.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's actually just kind of a shame that, Notre Dame's kind of interfering with this, because we had, I guess, a real chance to have all 4 of the. I wouldn't think hardly anyone would argue this, but all 4 of like the biggest quarterback names right now, that they could all be in the playoffs right now. We could have Tua, we could have Dwayne Haskins, Kyler Murray, and Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, that's a good point.
All in the playoffs. I don't mean any disrespect to Will Greer, but I don't think anyone would argue that those are 4 really, really hot names. And then so this could be just like a really legendary playoff. We said all these really high powered offenses and 2 really good defense, 1 mediocre defense, and 1 defense that doesn't even exist. So.
Well, I would be fascinated to see. Well, all the matchups are fascinating for different reasons, but Alabama, Oklahoma, the whole defense versus offense. Not that Alabama doesn't have a great offense, but you know what I mean. Just on that one side of the ball, that one matchup of another Alabama defense who, sure, LSU and Mississippi State are pedestrian, but they still have SEC athletes, and they're still scoring, 25 to 35 points against everybody else. So I get sick of people saying, well, LSU sucks and Mississippi State's offense sucks. I understand they're not prolific, but they do go out there and score 4 and 5 touchdowns against most teams. So they scored 0 against Alabama. And Auburn obviously was rendered useless in the second half and really most of the game. So I would be fascinated to see the Oklahoma-Alabama offense-defense matchup. That would be fun.
I would be too. And that actually brings me to a really good point here. I realize, all right, these facts do not escape me. I realize that Kyler Murray's numbers in every way except interceptions exceed Tua's. I get it. I also get that the Big 12 defenses are second to none in the other way. They are so far behind everywhere else or every other team in the country.
Yep.
I'm not trying to say what he's doing isn't unbelievable, all right? What he's doing better than Baker Mayfield did, and Baker Mayfield is like America's next hot model in the NFL right now. So if Kyler Murray would just drop this baseball nonsense, he could have a really, really awesome career ahead of him in the NFL. But no one's going to be able to convince me that those numbers are not skewed pretty heavily, because from all the teams he had played, none of them have any measurable sort of defense. I get it that Texas is supposed to have a decent enough defense. I get it. It's still nothing like playing in an SEC schedule, let alone the SEC West schedule, like what Tua has had to do. I guarantee you, if I put Tua in Oklahoma and I bring Kyler to Alabama, the numbers will be flipped. And there's no one that's going to be able to convince me of that. I get it. He's a better runner. But to be honest, Tua's a good runner too. We just don't design plays for quarterbacks to run. Alabama really never has. So, but
wouldn't that be fascinating to see that Alabama offense go up against Big 12 defenses for an entire schedule, and vice versa? Yeah.
As far as a matchup, direct team to team, I think Oklahoma would easily score 30 plus, probably get into the 40s in the fourth quarter. I don't think they would come out guns blazing, though.
I don't think they would either.
They have seen anything like Alabama's defense.
No.
It's like, okay, Alabama's defense isn't like it has been in the past. Yeah, we're still number 3 in the country, all right? The Big 12s are in the hundreds. So they haven't seen anything like it. Not only that, they can't practice for it. Oklahoma's defense, their pass defense especially, is literally last in the country. They are literally behind every Power 5 and every Group of 5 school in the country, their pass defense specifically. So they can't even practice for it. They can't practice for Alabama's defense. So I don't think they would come out guns blazing. I think it would have to be kind of like the rematch between Alabama and Clemson in 2016, where we were all over Deshaun Watson for the whole first quarter and much of the second, and he really only started getting going at the halftime and into the second half. I think it would be kind of like that.
Yeah. And if that happened,
that game, I don't think Oklahoma would be able to slow down Alabama.
Yeah, that's the
Alabama would score a will.
Sure, that's the difference. Alabama was playing with Jalen Hurts at quarterback against an elite defense, versus this time they'd have Tua taking the snaps, and they'd be playing Oklahoma's defense. So it could be 24-3 in a hurry if Alabama's defense got off in an Oklahoma game like they did against Deshaun Watson that second time. I don't think they'd score 40 points.
The formula is the same, honestly. For all of these hot shot quarterbacks, the formula is the same. If you have a great pass rush, you can mess them up. We saw that with Tua and Mississippi State, and to an extent LSU and Auburn, at least for the first half.
Mm-hmm.
And so we see it all the time, really. Kyler Murray's not had to play any pass rush at all. I know he's gotten sacked, but give me a break. This is because they get some lucky guys back there. But that's how I kind of think. I think that's honestly the most likely scenario that we're looking at in the future. Actually, I'm not even sure if I believe that or not. It's really I cannot call this Oklahoma and Texas game at all. History would suggest that Texas is going to win, because I know you talked about it with someone else earlier tonight. But this whole notion that it's hard to beat the same team twice is really only something people make up. Or if you look historically, the team that won the first game usually wins the second game. But I also understand that Oklahoma is just a better team than Texas.
Yeah, I don't know that, and so I wasn't promoting that, and I wasn't negating that or pushing back against that theory, but that's what it is, a theory. I've never seen anybody run the numbers. I would love to take the time, but it would take too much time to go through college football history, or at least the last 15 or 20 years, go through all those scenarios of a second game and see what the results are.
Email your buddy at SG1 Sports, because he mentioned it in his video.
Oh, did he?
I think he already did it. Yeah. The team that won the regular season game almost always wins the rematch.
Really?
Yeah.
And
I'm not sure where the notion came from.
And that's
where the theory came from.
And that's a pretty fair comparison, because if you're playing a second game in college football, that means both teams are good because they both made it to postseason or a championship game. So it's not like, Alabama played Vanderbilt twice in a particular season. So that would seem to be legitimate. It's like a buddy of mine who always, in looking at point spreads and betting NFL games, always throws the comment at me, well, it's a division game, so it's going to be close. There is no metric out there that I can believe, and I can almost guarantee that it doesn't exist. And if the numbers could be calculated, that division games and NFL games are no more closer than any other games. There's nothing to substantiate that, just because they play in a division, that it's going to be this tough game that the other games aren't. Doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Last thing before I go, Mark.
Sure.
Do you like the Big 12 conference formula, how everyone plays each other? Do you think we should get rid of divisions?
Oh, man.
I'm kind of leaning there. I'm actually kind of leaning there, because the SEC and the ACC right now are set up so horribly that we only play cross-divisionally with a team once every 6 years. So it'll literally be over a decade before we host Missouri again.
So
and it's just so sad, because they could, because a freshman can come to Alabama right now. If they were recruited this past year, this past year, they will never play Georgia. Never, not in the regular season. They're getting lucky because they're getting to play them in the SEC championship, but they will never play in the regular season. They can go all 4 years, because it's 6 years in between each play, and it's just so strange that we play all the SEC West teams every single year, but in teams in the cross divisions, it's just. We barely. It's like we barely even know them, and it got rid of a lot of interesting rivalries. Like LSU and Florida play every year, but Auburn and Florida was actually a pretty substantial rivalry for a while.
Yep.
And then if I look up at the Big Ten, the way that they drew those division lines, I still don't understand it. How they thought it was a good idea to put Ohio State, Michigan State, and Penn State all on one side.
It's geographical.
It's just so strange. Geographical. Okay. Well, they should have taken a leaf out of the ACC's book and not done it geographically then.
Well, they did to start. That's how they split them in 2011.
Yeah, the legends and leaders thing, right?
Yeah, they mixed them up. And what they did was they did an analysis of how good those programs were the previous 10 to 15 years and tried to project to make it balanced. And I don't know why they tore that down, and they added Maryland and Rutgers. That's what obliterated that. I don't know why they couldn't have just divvied those two up, because they're inconsequential, and just throw them one on each side and go from there. But they didn't. They thought, okay, well, we now have 7 to the east and 7 to the west, and they only protected one interdivision game, and that was Purdue and Indiana as a crossover that always takes place. And so they don't do it like the ACC and the SEC, where they have division rivals or out of division rivals. I don't know how they do the scheduling, but it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. The only thing that makes it slightly better than the SEC and the ACC is they play 9 conference games. Therefore, you see 3 of these 7 teams in the other division as opposed to only 2.
Yeah.
And you don't have a designated team to play. Therefore, you see the teams more frequently.
You see, whereas the SEC, it's particularly bad because we only see one different East team every year because we're stuck with a permanent rival opposite. While I get it for Alabama and Tennessee, LSU, Florida, Auburn, Georgia, that's really it.
So that's how the ACC set up as well. It's the same thing. The ACC is a designated team. They do the same exact thing, the ACC, and it doesn't make sense. Yeah.
But anyway, I just kind of think it might just be better just to go, just get rid of divisions. And if you still want to do a conference championship game, just do the best 2 teams. It can't be. I get it that we're going to have some years where it's going to be hard, and you'll have a triangle of wins and stuff. But that's unavoidable whenever you go. What was it in 2011? I think it was, where you had Alabama, Arkansas, and LSU all 1, 2, 3. And if like Arkansas beat LSU or something, you would have had a triangle of wins, and no one would have known what would have happened or something like that. So it's like I get it that they want to avoid that, but
that can happen, reasonable Gump. And the other issue of sorts is that, let's say Alabama goes 8-0, and there's a glut of 6-2 or 5-3 teams. So you have a significantly better first place team, and then you're exposing them to a loss in the championship game when they were clearly the best team during the regular season.
Well, I don't think that's a byproduct of getting rid of divisions, because we already kind of have. We had that with Alabama and the SEC for a couple of years there when we had to go spank Florida, a 3-loss Florida 2 years in a row, and Clemson has the exact same thing going on in the ACC. To be honest, Ohio State has that right now. What is Northwestern have 7 wins, 8 wins? I mean, so.
Yeah, but they have the same conference record. They have the same conference record.
And conference record?
Northwestern and Ohio State have the same conference record.
Okay, I meant overall wins.
So let's say let's take it to the Big 12. They could have a scenario, and I'm guessing that they will at some point, where let's say Oklahoma, they went undefeated a couple years ago in conference. They go 9-0. Let's say there's a 3-way tie for second place at 6-3. So you've got a 6-3 team playing a 9-0 team in the conference championship game. I have no issue with that, really, but some people have an issue with exposing the 9-0 team to having to prove itself after they already cleared out the league during a 9-game season, and then they're playing a team that they already beat, and now a 6-3 team could jump up and win the conference championship over the 9-0 team.
Yeah, but I mean, that's just sports everywhere, isn't it, though? I mean, sometimes those years happen where the team that's not supposed to go up there and ruin everyone's day, they seem to do it. I mean, and it's not even bad for sports, too. I mean, wasn't everyone rooting for the Giants in 2008? They win at the playoff with a losing record. I mean, so I just don't see that as much of a problem. I get it that you know, if Alabama has an undefeated season, we shouldn't have to, quote unquote, prove ourselves again to a 3-loss.
You're talking about the game, but I hate to correct you here. You're talking about the New York Giants that played the Patriots in the Super Bowl?
Yeah.
Yeah. They were 10-6.
I thought they went in with a losing record.
No.
In the playoffs. Well, then I'm wrong.
Other teams have, but they didn't make it as far. Anyway, so your original question was whether I like that format. I'm kind of torn, because I have credited the Big 12, and that's not where the credit goes, because they were forced into that situation. They weren't geniuses to come up with this formula. They had their league, picked apart to the point where they had to play each other all once. But they do have the purest championship. They play all the same schedule. Everybody has the same schedule. They all play each other. So there's no, I can pick apart every league and say why this schedule is a lot harder than that schedule, and why do they only have to play those two and they get to play, it's not fair in every other league. Nebraska had a brutal schedule compared to other teams in their division this year. They played Ohio State, Michigan, and Michigan State. Other teams got to play Rutgers and Maryland and Indiana. And I could go on with the other leagues. I've built a scheduling system for each conference that I thought was fair, but it didn't consist of playing everyone. I took it as is and just tried to fix it as best I could. So for the SEC, Reasonable Gump, I agree. We've got to protect Alabama, Tennessee. We've got to protect LSU and Florida. I know that has history. Fine, let's protect it. And of course, Auburn and Georgia. Why do we have to protect the other games? Why is it important that Mississippi State and Kentucky play every year? It's not. Why do all the games need to be protected? That would provide scheduling flexibility. Protect the 3 crossovers that make sense. Don't protect the other ones. And then balance out the scheduling in regards to playing 2 teams in the other division, or preferably 3 if you go to a 9-game schedule. That is a composite 500 record. So everyone is playing a 500 record from the previous season. So it's a equitable schedule. It's a fair schedule.
Yeah, and you and I have talked about that. For example, if we have to keep it at 8 teams, then if a team has to play Alabama from the West, if an East team has to play Alabama from the West, then they're also going to get gifted with like Arkansas or something like that.
Sure.
So it balances out.
Yep.
So anyway, I just wanted to get your thoughts on that, because I have been kind of a pro division, pro SEC West for a while. But when I heard some people start talking about ideas of just getting rid of divisions, made it to where all the teams can start playing each other a lot more frequently, it seemed like an interesting idea. Because I actually do really like the way the Big 12 does their schedule, even though I have zero respect for their teams and how they just play basketball with a football. Their conference setup is actually very intriguing, and I would definitely like to see versions of it spread through the other conferences.
Yep. All right, sir.
Anyway.
Yeah.
I'm going to let you go, man.
Definitely. Appreciate that. Reasonable Gump. Talking some college football. Picking on the Big 12. All right, we've got Washington and Utah underway. The Huskies had the football first. They drove it from their own 25 into Utah territory. I don't know what happened there, but suddenly Utah had the ball, but they went 3 and out and just punted back to Washington, and the Huskies have it 1st and 10 at their own 23. Go Huskies! I don't care who wins, but basically that's because I picked Washington to cover the 5.5 point spread, or as I see right here, 4.5. All right, we'll be back all day tomorrow with instant analysis. I can't guarantee later tonight whether I'll come back with a live stream after Washington and Utah. Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. What do you guys think? I will be analyzing the game because I poured so much into the pregame and the build-up to the Utah-Washington game with analysis from both sides and my prediction and so forth that I'll have some level of analysis on the Pac-12 championship game tonight. And people, let's invest in the championship games. I hate that this college football playoff situation has become us, forced us to become, not forced us, but has become the focus. And I love the conference championship games, and I think that they all should be valued, and there should be a reward, and that reward should be entry into the playoffs. But we'll get that fixed someday, hopefully. Enjoy the Pac-12 championship game. I enjoy the live chat each and every time. You guys are a great support to me. I appreciate it. And if you had anything that you placed in the live chat in regards to a question or comment that was meant for me and I missed it, just take that comment and put it into the comments section of any video, because I pull up the comments at least once a day and scan the comments, all of them put together. So it will make it into that list, and then I'll be able to respond to your question or comment. Enjoy championship weekend. We may be back later tonight, definitely tomorrow, as we make our way through the day, starting with the Big 12 Championship, Texas and Oklahoma at noon Eastern. And certainly we've got previews and predictions all over the place and more to come right here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Sign up for the newsletter. The voice of college football comes your way each and every Monday by sending your email address to mine at Mark Rogers TV. We'll see you soon. Mark Rogers TV at Gmail. We will see you soon, everyone. And I'll see what we got in the chat before I sign off. All right. See you guys later. Appreciate it.